What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 166 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where a few best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Howdy.
Howdy, my friend. How you doing this week, bud?
I'm okay. I'm very well. Since I've adopted Howdy, I've looked up cowboy hats like 3 times a week.
Oh my God.
Because I think that would be like just cool for the podcast, you know, just rocking up a cowboy hat, you know.
You gotta like wait long enough now that we all forget it, and then just you know, and like Steve won't even hear this, so you know you're good on that regard.
Cowboy for this, and a sailor hat for Steam Deck, then Mario hat for Nintendo Noise.
I love
Perfect.
it. I love it. Yeah.
Perfect.
I especially considering most of our listeners are audio only. Always love to add visual bits to the show. Always fun for
That's
me.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it's worth it. But
yeah, I agree. I will very often show like my screen or a controller or something in the middle, and as I'm doing it, I'm like, "Who's this for, man? Like, who's this for, other than you and me?"
You know, if it enhances our experience on the show, then I think it's worth it, you know, because that improves the audio.
Yeah, good point.
Speaking of enhancing experiences, we have an interesting rumor here today, and one of those types of rumors I think normally we'd maybe treat with more of a grain of salt, but considering where it's coming from, it's a pretty interesting one. Sony is allegedly working on a brand new PlayStation handheld that is going to allow players to play PlayStation 5 games on the go. Not like a different library, not like a hybrid console, like seemingly almost like a companion to your PlayStation 5 that will allow you to play those games at, you know, seemingly a lower resolution right on the go. This report comes from Takashi Mochizuki, who you guys will probably know as one of the key games reporters over at Bloomberg. He has been responsible for breaking a lot of the Nintendo Switch 2 rumors that have come out. He's reported on stuff like the OLED Switch before it came out. So he is somebody who is known for breaking stories in Japan and specifically around like hardware development and production, right? So basically what we've got from this report is that there's an unannounced handheld that's in the works. It is not, you know, on track to be released for at least a couple years, and it may end up not actually coming to market, right? It's something that's in active development that they are, you know, they're trying to get to a place where it's ready for a mass release. But those who were quoted who asked not to be named, obviously for, you know, reasons of anonymity, have said that there's a chance that it doesn't end up making it across the finish line, as many products do, right? Just because something enters R&D doesn't necessarily mean that it's ever going to be ready to be a commercial product. And the kind of, you know, thought process here, right, from Sony is that they want to expand the market for PlayStation games, and, you know, this is how they envision kind of creating another arm for PlayStation 5 games, right, is giving you the ability to play them on the go in the same way that we've seen them, you know, make that effort on PC, right, to expand the market of those games and just to get more players in the ecosystem.
And to make those games verified as well on the Steam Deck, even if they're not necessarily ready for that, but to have them like, oh yeah, look, your PlayStation games are wherever you want them to play them, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess that's the idea of the portal. My initial question here is, you know, if this was in the works, why do the portal as opposed to just like putting your all into getting this out? Also, just quickly while I remember, if I was doing a rumor, I would absolutely put in the rumor, by the way, the person that told me this said that it might also not come true, so either way I'd win. I did say it wasn't going to happen if like nothing said in 3 years. I did tell you it wasn't.
Could be nothing. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is if this was coming from a different source, I would probably, maybe I'd skip it. Maybe we'd add more grains of salt. But Mochizuki has like been such a reliable source for a lot of these things in the past. that, yeah, I mean, if he's reporting on it, I think that it's probably, it's true. Whether or not it ends up panning out as reported,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
is the other
He's
thing.
got the goods.
Yeah, for sure. And
all
I
right,
did just want to respond to one of the questions that you had about the portal, because according to Bloomberg, apparently the original plan for the portal was for it to be a standalone device, and similar to something like a Steam Deck, and that makes me think that that some version of a new handheld is probably inevitable. But the kind of other wrinkle here, right, is that there was that update just like a week ago, right, that they're going to be adding this new ability, or they've already added this new ability, I should say, to the portal, where you can now stream cloud games without needing to own a PlayStation. And as long as you have a PlayStation Plus subscription, you'll be able to take advantage of the PlayStation 5 games in that library under specific circumstances, right?
How do you connect and set up and update the PlayStation Portal without a PlayStation 5 to get to that far?
Because it can connect to Wi-Fi.
Okay, yeah, all right, fine, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. Okay, cool.
Because that's how it would stream the games like natively, right? Is like or I guess not natively. That's the opposite. How it originally worked is, I guess, what I meant to say, right? Is the PlayStation 5 connects to the same Wi-Fi and it just streams to that device, whereas now you're connecting and you're just getting it like kind of directly from the PlayStation server, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. This thing here about Sony intending it for it to be a PlayStation Portal similar to the Steam Deck really reminds me of that scene in Iron Man when he's like, all it can do is stream games. Like, Valve built this in a cave with a box of scraps. Like, what can we stream? Like, the technology is just not there yet for them. I guess also the thing about Valve and the Steam Deck is that there's such a massive, ancient sparse library of like it's your indie games, it's your Balatros, and then it's your your PlayStation games at the very tip top of like, hey, this is what this is capable of. Whereas if you're PlayStation and you're touting PS5 is the best place to play this, it's always 60 FPS this, it's performance with this, blah 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 blah, you want everything to be on that top level. So the technology, the power, the batteries, all that stuff might just not be there yet for them to want to release what the Steam Deck is, which is, I can play all those games, but there are compromises in terms of the battery life and me having to turn down settings or whatever. And what they probably want is to be able to cut the middle ground in there, but take away the power for you to change things around to make them weaker and just give you, this is a PlayStation, whatever the fuck they're going to call it, But this is just like the game on here, and it has one specific setting that just runs. But the thing just probably isn't capable of being powerful enough yet.
Yeah, I guess that's the question, right? Is like, what is the footprint on something like that? Because the new update for the PlayStation Portal, right, is that like you can have either 720 or 1080p resolution based on the strength of your connection and things like that. So I'm wondering if maybe that's the vision, right? Is like, rather than And to your point, right, you have something like that where it's like on your PlayStation 5, right, if you pick performance mode, you're locking in ideally at like 1080 60, right? And if you go for, graphics mode, that's when you get to the 4K and, the other like kind of upper echelons of the performance, right? So like, could you not theoretically have this thing target PlayStation 5 games in 720, right, upscaled to a 1080 screen, right, similar to what you see on something like the Switch, right, where at a smaller resolution, you just don't need that same level of fidelity, right? And rather than 60, maybe you lock in at like 45 or some of those other like kind of more incremental frame rates, right, that like Steve's always talking about using on the Steam Deck. And that's kind of how you can get something that on that smaller, tighter screen looks high quality and, doesn't feel like you're compromising, in a way where it is like lessening the experience as much as tailoring it for the device that you're playing it on, right?
Yes.
In the same way that if you played those same games on PC, they look a million, right? Like you could play Spider-Man on PC and blow out all the settings and it looks incredible. That doesn't make it not run well on the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 5. It's just, what is it targeting?
Different.
How is it prioritizing those things? How is it
Yeah.
making the most of what it has under the hood?
It's expectations. People have to know what they're getting with this sort of device. Same with the Steam Deck. People and I, if ever I go on Facebook, which isn't very often, I'm a member of the Steam Deck community on there, and the amount of times you see someone get this thing and they're like, "Oh, why isn't this running Call of Duty? Why isn't this running like the latest AAA games?" And I think that there's maybe an expectation that whether this is set by Valve or other people, that you buy this and you can take your AAA games on the go. And while that is possible, in small cases, there are some expectations that you have to be aware of. And I think PlayStation needs to set that expectation for the players that they are getting their games PS4 quality, let's say, not PS5 quality. Also, what you said about being able to play the games in 720p or 1080p right now on the portal, I think that's slightly different because streaming it in 720p, the game is still running in 1080p. You can still get the full frame rate. You're improving this. The stream quality is up or down, but that doesn't mean that the game visually is going to actually be running in 720p. It doesn't mean it's going to have like different graphic settings. It will be slightly different when you're running a game natively like that, won't it? Because you are going to have to actually turn down the lighting. There are going to be more noticeable like jagged edges. There is going to be less, less AA. Like, there are going to be compromises that have to be made, but Sony need to, keep the messaging good there. They also maybe need to build in remote play into it, make this the Portal 2 and have the port capability so that when you're at home, you can still get the full 1080p. I'm getting the full quality game now, but when you're out and about, have the reduced, the native version and the because the same way when I'm at home, I like to play my Steam games, games from my PC on my Steam Deck, so I can enjoy like full quality, 8-hour battery life, all of those things I get to enjoy, which I which when I'm out and about I don't get that. So if PlayStation can do that, then that's great.
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing that made them push out the Portal as it was, rather than waiting for this thing to get across the finish line, is maybe their expectation that this is something that's not going to be totally doable until near the end of the generation or maybe even the next generation. And I think that's where you get into a danger zone in my mind. Is I think the biggest, maybe not the biggest, one of the biggest contributing factors. Okay, I'm going to say this. The biggest factor for the PlayStation Vita's failure was its proprietary memory. I think probably the second biggest factor to its failure was that it was kind of between two consoles. It had functionality originally with the PlayStation 3, and then it had a bunch of connectivity with the PlayStation 4, and it never quite felt like a perfect companion to either of them. And I think the best thing they can do with this thing is kind of pitch it as either an alternative to the PlayStation 5 or as a companion to it, right? Where it's like you're essentially buying a handheld version of the console you have at home. And the way that we're going to save money, right, is like charge you for it twice, right? And like rather than something like the Switch where it has to be this hybrid solution, that's not the goal, right? And it is like this is going to be a dedicated accessory. Or if you are like the person who feels like I don't want both, I don't need both, and it's like, all right, you buy the handheld version and maybe it has an HDMI out or something like that, and you can play it at a lower fidelity, similar to like the experience you have with the Xbox Series S, right? Where it's like, oh, if you don't need those extra bells and whistles, you can kind of get this base entry level unit that has slightly less, under the hood, but at the end of the day, any game that ships on PlayStation 5 can play on this handheld. And I think if they can achieve that, that's something that would, to your point, set it apart from, say, the Steam Deck or the Nintendo Switch, of like having a certain echelon of games that it can offer that are not available on any other handheld yet.
I think as soon as you include that HDMI, you muddy the you say that it's two separate devices, but as soon as you take the HDMI away, so add the HDMI and have the option of plugging it into a TV, that's when it becomes a hybrid, and then I think that's when it starts to be that very much feels like a Steam Deck thing, because it is a PC versus the PS Vita. They had like a whole TV only version of the Vita that obviously flopped, but if that is the PlayStation 5 and the handheld is its own thing, I think that is a much better way of doing it. And also, you position yourself against, like, if Xbox brings out their handheld and you have the Switch 2 and you have the Steam Deck, if we have this whole new space race where all of these things have their dedicated handhelds out and there's no, confused messaging or anything like that, that would be wicked. I would really like that.
So talk to me about that, because I think that's an interesting point of the idea of them being separate. Are you saying like in the way that like the PlayStation Vita was its own platform, or are you saying in that the idea that like rather than it being we're going to flirt with the hybrid console thing, we're going to just commit to the idea that this is a PlayStation 5 that you can hold in your hands and that's it?
Yes, I think the same library, same games. You have to have everything be playable, otherwise it doesn't work. Like, you buy a PlayStation, you expect to play all PlayStation games. If you're going to do this, it has to be every single PlayStation game, PS5 game, is playable on this thing. The only thing it's going to be confusing is it's going to be digital only, which I guess the new consoles have.
Yeah, that's kind of already the
drives.
standard, right?
That's just not going to be the option. Yeah. So if you can just have your digital library go with you everywhere, you're going to push more people to go digital as well by doing that. So that's good for Sony. They're not giving the stores any more money because everyone's buying only digital. It's just another avenue of getting you there. But yeah, you buy your games once, you play them on here, you play them on here. Never the twain shall meet, apart from maybe to be able to stream from them like the PS Portal. But I don't think you position this as one product or products that definitely go together. It's like, you have your PlayStation 5, you have your PlayStation 5 Portable, you play exactly the same games, and one goes with you, one stays here. And I think you're right that it doesn't need to be the way the Switch does it. It doesn't need to be the way that the Steam Deck does it. It can just be its own thing. It's simplified messaging for that's what consoles are supposed to be. They're supposed to be simple. You plug them in, you play, you're happy, right?
Yeah, and I think if you're considering, kind of the way that the Steam Deck has found its success, right, is like as this kind of, it is a hybrid solution. It is, this device that allows you to play all these different games that you never got to get on the handheld before. But it does have a lot of the trappings of PC gaming, right? Of like needing to look up specs, needing to do research to understand whether a game is going to play or not. Things that, to your point, right, like the, console player doesn't want to deal with, right? Or that even just like a more casual player doesn't want to deal with. If you're somebody who only has, 15, 20 minutes a day to play video games, right? Well, like after you put the kids to bed or what have you, you probably don't want to spend that same amount of time trying to figure out if the game is going to run on your handheld. And I think that was something that we talked about when the Portal came out, and I think it's proven that gamer exists, right? Regardless of maybe it's not a huge percentage of players, right? But we know that the Portal has sold somewhere in the neighborhood of like 420K to 630K just in the United States, which
is more than we thought, right? Way more than we thought. We were pretty down on it.
More than Sony thought too.
Yeah.
And I will say at the time, like, I defended it not because I thought it was this ideal product, but because I could see that gamer existed somewhere, and that the idea, a lot of people in our community, right? And you and Steve were both expressing this of like, why would you buy this for just like $200 more or whatever, you could get a Steam Deck? And the answer is, I think that PC gaming, the Steam Deck, like those kinds of modular devices, like it's like a lifestyle, right? Like it's in the same way that like there are people that buy cars because they're car people and they want to tinker with them and they want to make adjustments and have this thing that is like a project that's always evolving and it exactly meets their needs and their style and whatever. Like there are a lot more people, right, that just want to buy a car and just get to where they're going, right? And I think that's where this kind of device can really shine, right? Is like hitting that more, the person that, plays all their games on PlayStation and maybe they're going to go visit their in-laws or they're going on vacation or whatever, and they want to keep playing, whatever the new game, like Metaphor ReFantazio or something like that, right? And they want to take it with them, right? And they want to just have it be a seamless experience where, to your point, their library exists across both devices. And that's the reality that, to some degree, right, we enjoy with the Steam Deck. If you're somebody who plays on PC, is like you can just pick up right where you left off and your save is there. And there's no friction between those two experiences, assuming the game runs properly.
Yeah. My friends over at the Mimics Vale, they're big Portal fanatics. I remember them saying when they first got their Portals, maybe a couple of weeks after, they, the conversation came up of like, oh, people have said just get a Steam Deck, or that you can just use your phone, or remote play already exists, blah 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 blah. We're talking about me, to be fair. But they said that what they really liked about the Portal overall is that it does one job, but it does that job perfectly.
Right.
Doesn't have all the bells and whistles, doesn't need to be tinkerable, doesn't need to be a device you can do everything with, or a power user device. It's one thing that does it perfectly. It's the same reason like the iPhone, I'm generalizing before anyone thinks I'm having to go at iPhones or anything. People buy iPhones, or people used to buy iPhones back in the day, maybe when there was a bigger disparity between what iOS and Android could do, because you buy your iPhone, you can't get lost. You can't get confused. Everything works.
People always say it just works, right?
Just works.
It quote unquote just works.
You put your account in, you get all your stuff, and that's that. Whereas the old classic idea of like a Samsung power user, of like they buy their Samsung because they want to be able to tinker with all the things. They want to be able to have all the different options. They want to be able to set the font to that horrible cursive font people used to have. They want to be able to like set a weird keyboard. All that shit you used to be able to do only on Android when Android looked hideous. People, but the iPhone was the phone that sold the most. The iPhone is the most popular phone every single year because people just want that. It's the same for the PlayStation. And I think the reason the Portal has sold as much as it has sold is likely because people have people realize that, oh, okay, this just does what it needs to do and it does it well.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for like coming in at a cheap price point too, right? Of like, for twice the money you could get something with a lot more functionality. It's like, yeah, but it's twice the money, and if I don't want that other functionality, if I don't need that other functionality, and I don't want to spend time optimizing it or following a tutorial or whatever, right? Like it's like that's a whole lot of extra steps. And I think that to your point, that's supposed to be the value proposition of a console is simple, right? Is this thing that just gives you the result that you expect every time. And, I think that is an area where PlayStation and Xbox have a real opportunity to come out and present an alternative to, the kind of underpowered, focused on innovation and Nintendo approach, and the, Steam Deck approach, which is like Wild West. And that has its own, set of benefits, but in the same way that there are a lot of people that will never get into PC gaming, even though, you might get better performance and you might save more money in the Steam marketplace or this or that. Your library never gets divided among devices. Like there are a million advantages to PC gaming, but there are also millions of players that that's not the experience they're looking for, So I do want to talk about, you kind of teased it earlier, right? Of like this potentially new era of a handheld console war, right? And what that actually looks like. And I want to talk about that in just a second here. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. You all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go check out those shows like the Nintendo Noise podcast or the Steam Deck podcast, you can do that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games, where you can find all the ways you can get involved. You can join our Discord right into the show between episodes, keep the conversation rolling, or maybe get your thoughts right on the air. However you choose to get involved or show your support, thank you for tuning into the shows. Thank you for being a member of the community, and thank you for sending us your thoughts on this week's show for next week's show. So, I want to talk about what this new era of handheld console wars could look like, because I think it's very interesting to see all the players all the major players, right? Like acknowledging what a major force in the market the Nintendo Switch has been, right? Like on track to be the best-selling console of all time. At the very least, it's locked in at number 2. I think its success is maybe too big to ignore. And then seeing the Steam Deck come in and kind of, create this whole new era of these more, niche, higher price, higher specs, handheld PCs, showing that there is clearly a desire for more, right? More handhelds, stronger handhelds that have different value propositions than what Nintendo is looking to offer. And, we've now got this rumor that Sony's working on another, successor to the PlayStation Portable line. We had Xbox, President Phil Spencer, outright acknowledge that they are working on an Xbox handheld and that it may be years away, but he's talked about it more and more to the point where now it's just like, this is a thing. It's coming. We know that it's coming, right? Some version of it is coming. And of course, we have the Steam Deck, right? And all of its imitators, but the Steam Deck is obviously the main contender there. Mm-hmm. We know that a Steam Deck 2 is inevitable at some point. So it's this idea of like, if this device exists, if it makes it to market, we are looking at a world where, maybe the console wars are over, right? Now that everybody kind of has a different strategy, but it seems like the handheld wars may be the next big frontier, right? Between a Nintendo Switch 2, this PlayStation 5 portable, this Xbox portable, and the Steam Deck 2, and maybe, some other competitors that come in and eventually maybe make more of a splash in that space. And what I find so interesting about that is I think that all of them have a somewhat obvious value proposition, except PlayStation, I think, right? Which is Nintendo has the obvious advantage of their first-party software and the strength of the Switch brand, them having generally hardware that's cheaper and focuses more on, innovative gameplay and things like that rather than chasing
and just
graphical fidelity.
And the pure hybrid nature of just you buy it once and you have both,
Yeah, that's true.
So that's like a big USP for that.
And then, of course, when you talk about first party, right, like they have one of the biggest stables of developers. So they have such a strong amount of games that come out that you can only play on their device, right, which obviously ends up being a big value proposition for anybody, right, like regardless of what your other platforms you engage in are. Xbox has the obvious advantage of leveraging Game Pass, right? And I think having the ability to like tap into that huge library on the go is something that people have been asking for a really long time, and I think is something that could really, really help increase the value of Game Pass.
Yeah. And then also backwards compatibility is a big thing because
very true.
Xbox games have incredible backwards compatibility. Loads of them just get upscaled from like the original Xbox era, and to be able to, the huge pull of the Steam Deck is play all these old classics you love. To be able to do that on the Xbox handheld would be wicked without any effort. It's all included in Game Pass. Or you go on and you buy these like £3 games you used to play as a kid. Wow.
Smart delivery makes them look incredible. Yeah, that is a huge advantage.
And again, your library is now on your PC, your console, and on your handheld. And it's Game Pass lets you, or just your Xbox library lets you, play your games where the hell you want to. Everything's an Xbox. We know this. We know this from recent advertising.
Exactly. So then I think the question... Oh, and then Steam Deck, of course, right? Like you said, it's obviously access to the Steam ecosystem and that library, but it's also the open source nature of the platform, right? That you can hack it, that you can use it to play retro games or, like whatever, right? It can basically do anything within its, technical limitations. So then, like, the question is, what can Sony do to make their handheld stand out? And I think the obvious advantage they have is, like, obviously there's the PlayStation first-party output. There are a lot of great games there, but they are available on PC now. So, like, you could play them on the Steam Deck, provided they play well. And that, comes with a lot of caveats, and you imagine that the experience on this would be better and whatever, right? But it is one of those, like... it's doing the one thing better, not having a totally unique thing that you need to buy this device for, which hurts it a little bit, I think. And then there's obviously I think the strength of the PlayStation brand, right? That at the end of the day, more people own PlayStations than they own Xboxes. There's more attachment to PlayStation and their IP than there is to Xbox. And I think that a lot of people, are more attached to things like Xbox hardware and the ecosystem than they are any one exclusive. And we've seen over the last couple of years, I think them even maybe a little bit muddle the Xbox identity by like the way that they're expanding is just buying other things that you already know. How much are people playing Activision games and thinking it's an Xbox game, right?
Yeah.
Like,
because if people say Xbox games, the obvious guess is still going to be Halo and Gears of War and stuff, when for that hasn't been the case for the last few years.
Right.
Not because they haven't been releasing those games, but because they own so many things that Starfield is an Xbox game. What is an Xbox game is a big question, especially when those are also available on PlayStation as well.
Exactly. And that's the other thing, right? Is like Xbox's exclusives come to PlayStation, they come to PC. So, it's less about the software and it's more about the services. So like, I do think Sony kind of like slightly edges them out in that part of it in terms of like exclusive things you can play on the device. But then it begs the question of like, is that enough, right? Like, what does this thing need to, is just being a part of the PlayStation ecosystem enough to make this thing a success? Arguably, maybe, right? Because the PlayStation brand is so strong and we saw the Portal exceed, our expectations and everything. But like, we have seen PlayStation sales decline a little bit in the last year or so, which, is I think partly a lot of people who want it getting it, but also like the reality that the recession right now is like making people have less money to spend on, games or upgrades or things like that. And you're seeing more people, I think, be a little bit more choosy about where those dollars go, right? So like, is that something that is going to be enough to carry a whole other device that, ostensibly, right, is going to need to carry probably a pretty large price tag to achieve the specs that they're talking about, right? Like, I think it would be surprising if this thing was less than $400 or $500.
See, this is where I think Sony can do, or what I think its point should be, is our games, they look amazing because this thing is so powerful. You can play them here 2 years before they come to PC. But also, you're cheaper than people expect you to be, because when you buy the Xbox handheld, this theoretical Xbox handheld, you buy Games Pass, and sure, that's giving Xbox £10 a month or whatever. But you're also only getting that £10 a month. People aren't going to be buying games that often. Whereas on PlayStation, the games are still full price, and you have complete control over that market.
And you've been building a library there since the PlayStation 4 generation, right? Which is the thing that Phil talked about, is like that's the struggle Xbox has had, right? Is they lost a really key generation. So there are a lot of players who will come into a PlayStation Portable and have a huge library the same way that we talk about with Steam, right? Where like you just have that library that you've already built up.
Yeah.
Whereas like you probably don't have that on Xbox, if you're a newer player.
Or even if you're an older player and you just have Game Pass, you've not been buying games. You've been playing the games that are on Game Pass. Maybe some of them are rolled off of Game Pass. Maybe you don't have an actual library. You just have a subscription you keep active, and that's not enough for Xbox. So they maybe need to price it a little bit higher than PlayStation do. But I think if PlayStation undercuts Xbox and leans on all of those things, I think and also just the DualSense, like the whole like the triggers, the haptics, and all these things that the I don't know how you do the touchpad. I guess it's just a screen, but that doesn't really make much sense. But all of these things you try and build into it to make it that perfect. The reason you like PlayStation, you buy PlayStation in a handheld form factor, whereas Xbox, I think, I don't know, doesn't have those kind of gimmicks. So really, it's just like simple. It's classic. It's how you want it, how you expect it to be. Whereas Sony does.
I think the services are more gimmick. Like, I'm sorry, the value proposition is more service oriented, right? Like that's always been Xbox's thing. Is like Game Pass, right? But before that, it was like Xbox Live is the best online solution, and Xbox Arcade like had all these. It's like And granted, that was a software solution as well, but like it was this innovative thing about the Xbox storefront and publish. It's like it always has more to do with the experience on Xbox, I think, than it does. PlayStation is really just about like there are games here that you want to play, you know? And yeah, I think that you make a good point there that like maybe that is enough, you know? Like in the same way that like that's all that it took for the PlayStation 5 to beat the Xbox Series X, right? Is that like, well, PlayStation has cachet in a way that Xbox just doesn't on the same level, you know?
Yeah, and definitely not anymore. I think they have less. The people's opinion of them are less. I don't know. They don't carry the same cachet they used to. I don't think. There is no longer that kind of race. It's like PlayStation and Xbox. However, what really excites me about the idea of Sony and Xbox diving either for the first time into handhelds or back into handhelds alongside the Steam Deck, alongside the Switch, alongside the Asus and all this stuff like that is it's sort of like so in the 1960s people wanted to, the US wanted to get to the moon before Russia or before China and all those people, and we got some incredible technological leaps in that time, right? The 1970s, Seiko invents the quartz watch movement, undercutting, all these Swiss watchmakers. And even though they are still the same Swiss watchmakers and they are the pinnacle, they start quaking in their boots and they're like, shit, we need to start doing things to innovate and introduce quartz and catch up with Japan because they're doing something we've never been able to do before. In the 80s, Nike introduces the Air Max. It's got a big bubble in it. People go crazy for it. It's this new type of cushioning. And then all you see for the next 10 years is Adidas introduces their cushioning. Asics introduces a new cushioning. New Balance introduces, they're all like, technology is the new thing. And then you get these incredible running shoes. And look where we are now, right? In terms of running shoes, you get crazy stuff. You get full bubble Air Maxes, blah, 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 blah. All that to say, the Switch comes out, the Steam Deck comes out, and now the two biggest console manufacturers also want a part of that pie. They're all going to be trying to fight each other and one up each other. And it's not like this is the PC market where, so far all the other people have made worse Steam Decks, better in some way, but also they can't keep that up because they don't get any more money from that. So they need to keep making them every year or every other year or, whatever they're going to do. They're just not going to be able to really do things like undercut and innovate in a way that that Valve is capable of. Whereas Microsoft and PlayStation, who come with their own stores, they come with their own ecosystems, they come with their own, they don't need to worry so much about where's our profit going to come from on this thing because it comes from buying games like Steam. Right. All of a sudden, we're going to hopefully start to see like crazy things. And especially when you got Xbox and PlayStation both trying to be in that market, maybe Valve is and Nintendo are going to put it along by themselves like they always do. But these two fighting, that stuff's going to trickle down, I think. And I'm really excited for what comes from that in the handheld space. Because if you remember a little while ago, I did a whole Steam Deck podcast with you about how I dreamt of a hybrid future and how your games go everywhere you want them to go and they revolve around you and they fit in wherever you need to fit in. And we're getting there. We are getting there.
Yeah. And I think you're onto something there for sure, that ultimately competition is good for the consumer, right? Like that need to undercut one another on price or deliver better features or better functionality or, better value propositions, right, is only going to be beneficial to us and our ability to have a better experience. And I think another really exciting wrinkle of this that we haven't really even talked about is like how this will motivate Nintendo, because this is a space that they have absolutely dominated for a long time and they still innovated and they still were pushing the envelope. So if there is like real legitimate pressure from their competitors to make something bigger and better, right? Like, yeah, like I think that's probably only going to benefit whoever you are, wherever you decide to start playing on handheld moving forward. You'll probably have a better experience for it.
Oh, I'm a donut. I've just realized PlayStation do have something else they can benefit from, and that is you take PSSR that you have on your PS5 Pro that upscales all these games and does all these things it does. You apply that to a 720p game or a whatever resolution game you want to do. You have this upscaling technology built directly into the hardware you already know how to use, and all of a sudden you can make your games look so much better than they do on Xbox or on the Steam Deck because you have PSSR. You have this thing built in. You
Yeah.
take, the difference between 4K or 1080p and 4K or whatever you're getting with the PS5 to the PS5 Pro is nowhere near as good as it can be from 720p. The lower the resolution the game is, the higher you notice, the more you notice it with PSSR, right? So yeah, that's a big selling point, is that you don't even need to have that much of a reduction in quality, because these games could be running at 480p, and sure, it's not going to be perfect, but you've got PSSR running these things at 720p or 1080p from a lower resolution, and bam, you've got these incredible looking upscale games that Xbox don't have. And the reason I thought of that is because the Switch 2's big power jump is going to be DLSS built into it, right? That's supposedly the big thing. It's Nvidia's technology built into it. And Sony has that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely that's a good point. So yeah, ultimately, I guess we didn't get to this part of it, like how we feel about it. I think this is exciting, right? Like, as somebody that has always really liked handheld gaming, has always believed that it was a pivotal part of the gaming ecosystem, even when it was kind of in a downturn. I'm really pleased to see how much it seems to be on everybody's minds these days, and I like hardware, right? So it's like I'm excited by the idea of having 4 handhelds that I actively want to engage with. Like, I think that's a very exciting future, and I know for many of us it probably isn't. You're like, do I need 8 consoles in my house? Do I need, but like, for me, that's something I am excited to like compare the functionality and see how it feels and what are the ones I actually like to use and all that stuff, and like getting to see like what the homebrew community does and how people, find new ways to like get life out of these devices is like, that's always an exciting thing for me. So
that was my first thought as well. Like, I wonder how long it takes to get this thing loaded with emulators.
Yeah, right. I mean, think about how like before the Steam Deck, I think the Vita, and to this day, it's still a really, really valuable tool for that. But
incredible.
Until then, until the Deck, I think it was like probably the best device you could use for emulation.
So I had a PSP Go that was really great for that as well.
Yeah, it's an exciting time.
It is, yeah. I think I'm mostly excited for, there are going to be people who haven't been able to experience handheld gaming in a long time. Maybe the last time they actually played anything handheld was the PSP, because they didn't buy a Vita because they didn't want to spend that much money. Those people, and I've specifically got a friend who he's always like, I think I could want a Steam Deck, but I don't want to play things in handheld. I don't think it's for me. And I want him and people like him who are PlayStation gamers to pick up a handheld console again and be like, oh, this is amazing. And then maybe that also changes their, not changes, but like introduces them to new games, introduce them to games they haven't played before, or maybe they'll play Balatro and stuff like that they don't want to play on their big TV, but they'll gladly play in their hands. And it's just, an exciting way to immerse yourself in different kinds of games, and
absolutely.
That's why I like handheld gaming.
Yeah, I think there are just some experiences that feel more at home on a handheld, and I love having the opportunity to have certain experiences that like you prefer in certain contexts. Like I always, when I'm going on a vacation, or like, what are the games I'm gonna load up? Like, what do I feel like playing? And I think like being able to kind of find a way to elevate the experience a little bit, so that I'm not always being like, what are the best games to play on handheld, and rather just being like, how do I need to play my game right now, right? If I'm at home, if I'm on the road, if I'm at my desk, like having the option to just like have my game, my library meet me wherever I am at that time, is I think the ideal future.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I cannot wait. Like I said earlier, cannot wait for what this means for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to let us know what you think about Sony re-entering the handheld market, is that something you're excited about? Were you an old school PlayStation Portable fan and you're ready to jump in day one? Is this something that they need to sell you on and prove that they're going to be able to stick it out and be in there for the long haul and not abandon it at the first sign of trouble like they did with the Vita or the VR2? I'm interested in hearing from you guys, and is this something that you're excited about? Because I know a lot of people in our community are big handheld players like us. So let let us know. Comments down below, right into the show, flipscreen.games. That's the website. You'll find all the ways that you can get involved or write in, however you choose to get involved. Thank you so much for joining us for another one of these guys. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. We'll see you next week.